On this episode of Delivering Marketing Joy, we talk to Mark Graham about what it's like to run multiple businesses and what it's like to work with our wives. Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. Back by popular demand, one of my favorite guests is Mark Graham. Mark is the founder of Right Sleeve and commonsku. He's kind of a hero, as it were, in the promotional products industry. And so we're going to jump right in with some questions. Thanks so much for joining us today, Mark.
I want to thank you for having me back on the show. Real honor to be here, and I will say for the audience that I am not only lucky to be on the show for a second time, but I am also lucky to be the recipient of one of these limited edition fancy pants Delivering Marketing Joy shirts right here. And if you're well behaved and you ask nicely, I think Kirby might send you one as well. But you have to have a good comment on the podcast in order to earn one. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that, Kirby. It's really awesome, and super excited to start wearing it.
I bet you are. Later today, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe at the end of this podcast, you might see you put it on. So.
Well, you'll be all sweaty from this.
Yeah.
So
the only disappointment that I have, Kirby, is that it was not signed. But maybe I have to send it back so you can sign it.
Bring it. Absolutely. I'll gladly do it. Well, hey, let's jump right in. Interesting thing within the industry, but also really, I think, from any industry, you run two different companies. They both are in the promotional products industry. You have a distributorship, and then you have commonsku, which operates a little bit like a supplier, and you can correct me on that if you'd like. But at the end of the day, you're operating two different companies. How do you manage that? How do you, not only from a time perspective, but just from a motivation perspective, Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. It's been a really interesting last several years. So as you say, I founded Right Sleeve, which is a promotional products company, a little bit more on the agency side, but got into the industry in the late 90s and started off and grew a team. There's about 15 people that are at Right Sleeve today. And about 5 years ago, we developed a business plan for a software company. So you could certainly call commonsku a bit like a supplier. I'd probably more describe it more as a service provider software company, but it certainly is not a distributor. And we did that because of our experience in having built software and technology at Right Sleeve. So we wanted to create a business that was entirely separate in the software space that leveraged our experience as a distributor and using order management and CRM software. So that when that happened, in terms of how we manage both, it's evolved. When we first started out, while we knew that the company would be successful, we still needed to balance having two companies. So what we really started working on is we created the business plan, and we knew what we needed to hit in order to make commonsku a viable standalone company. And to do that, we knew that we needed to spend almost 100% of our time building that company. And I always like to say that Right Sleeve is kind of like that 22-year-old that's graduated from college. He or she knows how to walk and drive, and they've got employment, and they don't need mommy and daddy anymore. Whereas commonsku is more, not like a baby, but more like, maybe a 7 or 8-year-old. So it can walk, but it still needs a little bit of guidance. You kind of need to walk him to school still. And
that's a really good analogy.
Well, it's one that just came to my mind. So to finish the question, what we needed to focus on to balance both is we had to focus on building that amazing team at Right Sleeve so that it could run without us. And right now, our involvement, Catherine and my involvement in Right Sleeve, is essentially nil, and it runs entirely separately with the management team that is able to run and manage that. And that's worked out really, really well. We're really, really proud of that team, whereas we can now focus 100% of our efforts on commonsku, which is now a much larger entity, a much more robust entity with customers that we have a very strong responsibility to. So I don't think we could have done it had there not been that commitment to the team, because I think you can only do one of them really, really well. And you need to delegate, and you need to walk away and see if it can stand on its own 2 feet. So far, so good, and that's been the plan.
That's cool, man. And congratulations. It's really cool. And yeah, it's one of those things I would say I aspire to. So that's good stuff.
Hey, you're already there. You've got your video company in Hasseman. I mean, you're going to run for mayor one of these days. I can just see it.
I am not. But don't start that rumor. So what are you really excited, what project, what thing are you really excited to be working on right now?
Well, as I was saying in my last answer, my sole focus these days as an entrepreneur is on commonsku, and there's so many exciting things that we're working on there. But I'd say that the thing that is the most current and most exciting is building the product out such that we can have suppliers and distributors truly integrated and connected with each other. Okay. And for those people who have no idea what I just said. The basis of the product that we built, outside of it being a robust CRM and order management platform, is having suppliers that are really invested and incorporated into the platform so that they can be strategic and creatively engaged with distributors. And that's really exciting. That's a very 21st century view of how the industry, I think, should work. That's my personal view. Right. And building out products that allow for suppliers to be more tightly integrated with distributors so they can be true partners, not just lip service partners, but true partners where both of them are interacting with each other on this very granular level. I find that hugely exciting and is something that's very disruptive, but I think in a positive way, not disruptive in I'm trying to cause trouble, but disruptive in a way that is really benefiting, bringing people forward. So if we can pull that off, then we'll see. We'll update you.
I think you're on the right track. Okay, final question for you, and it's one that's kind of near and dear to my heart. You work with your wife, as do I. I always find that interesting. I feel like couples either can do that or they can't do that at all. In my experience, how do you balance that, both at work but also at home?
It's a great question, and I laugh when you say that I work with my wife. I would say that I probably work for my wife, probably like you. She certainly is the boss. So some of you may know Catherine, and she and I have been working together formally since about 2007, after she finished having our children. Decided that she wanted to stop working in the management consulting space where she was, and she wanted to be a little bit more closer to home and not having to travel so much. So I said, well, I know just the place. and we haven't looked back. And I think the way that we make it work is we each have very defined roles. And certainly they complement one another and there's overlap, but she has a very different position than I do. And it's funny, during the day in our office, there'll be some days where I don't even see her at all. Yeah. And that's probably a good thing for her, because maybe I drive her crazy. And where we debrief is often at home. And it's interesting, if you would have said that to me a couple of years ago, I would have said, well, I don't want to bring work home at all. Mm-hmm. And it works really, really well for us, because when we're talking about work, it's not really work for us. Mm-hmm. It's exciting to catch up on what she's done, and it's exciting for her to catch up on what I've done. And I think that we really complement each other well. And I think that if work wasn't fun and challenging and stimulating, then we would drive each other crazy. Right. And I think the other thing is that if we were both in each other's hair, because we're both strong-minded personalities, like most entrepreneurial couples are, that wouldn't work either. So having that differentiation is really important as well. And I wouldn't work with anyone else. She's 100 times smarter than I am. I learn a ton from her, and she keeps me in line. And I'm not just saying that.
It's funny. I totally agree, my friend. I totally agree. So this is the time in the show. I've asked you your 3 questions, so it's your opportunity to ask me a question. So bring it.
So I'm not say take the easy route out, but the last question you just asked me is the one that I wanted to ask you as well, because you, of course, work with Amy, and I'm curious as to how you're able to make it work. I'm interested to see whether your story is any different than mine. So that's my question.
So thanks. So yeah, actually, I think similar in a sense. Amy and I, though, Amy's been for a long time the person who, when I have an idea, she's the person who I want to run it by. I tend to be sort of the idea guy. Not that she doesn't have them, but she's the one who keeps me grounded. When I first started hiring team members here, I made the joke that, if they say, "Man, that's really smart," or whatever, I'd be like, "Don't tell me when I'm smart. I already think I'm smart.
Yeah.
You need to tell me when I'm not smart." And so when Amy wasn't working with me, that was part of the piece that I missed. Sometimes I don't want her to tell me when I'm not smart, but yeah, for the most part, I think the thing with Amy and I is we have different skill sets, and I think your point was right. Is we will often go through a day and not see each other, and the kids will be like, "Well, why are you talking about this at work? Why didn't you see each other all day?" And we're like, "Yeah, we didn't see each other all day."
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the separation is really good, and at the end of the day, probably like you and Catherine, there's a huge deal of respect, and that I don't know what it would be like to do it without her. So there you go.
Right. Yeah, there you go. It's a great answer. It's very interesting. But I think that we're both lucky to have strong partners that we can work with and complement with.
Absolutely. Well, hey, man, thanks so much. I appreciate you being a part of this edition of Delivering Marketing Joy, and look forward to maybe talking with you again soon.
You bet, my friend. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.
All right.
Hey, thanks for watching, but wait! Can you do me a favor? Please subscribe to my channel. If you haven't done it already, the way to do it's right over here. And hey, if you want to watch the last episode, check that out over here. Again, before you leave, subscribe!